So as we are looking at inequalities, our first part is going to look at definitions and notations. We're going to learn how to define inequalities, use proper notation, and graph on a number line. First of all, the definition of an inequality, it's a mathematical relationship of quantities that are not equal. So for some of the notations, we have the less than symbol, and then we have the greater than symbol. Now, when we read it, we do use the phrases less than and greater than, but when you're working with them, really it's just most important to know which side has the larger quantity, which side has the smaller quantity. So over here in the red circle, let's just know that this always opens up towards the larger number. So the larger opening is towards the larger side and the smaller point is towards the smaller side. Now on a graph, we note the endpoints with either open circles, that may have been what you were used to, or with parentheses, depending on where your endpoint is. So let's take a look at negative numbers first, because this is where a lot of people struggle with their inequalities, is when we start working with those negative numbers. So let's say that we're going to compare the numbers -4 and -1. Well, notice on any number line, the further you go to the right, the larger the numbers you get. As you go to the left, the numbers get smaller. So if we're comparing -4 and -1, -4 is to the left, so it is smaller than -1. Same thing if we were to write -1 and -4, -1 is still the larger number. So we haven't changed the values. They're both -1, -4. The relationship, that comparison is still the same. It's still saying -4 is the smaller number, -1 is the larger number. All we did was switch the notation. Now let's take a look at a number line when we're working with these variables. Let's suppose we had x is less than let's pick a number that's on here. If x is less than 3, if we were to graph this on the number line, that means all of these numbers, that are less than 3, going on and on forevermore, we can even color in that arrow, everything less than 3 counts. But as we get closer in here, well, is that a 2.9, a 2.99, a 2.999? We can add that 9 forever, right? So how close do we get to that 3? How do we tell our readers? That's where the open circle or the parentheses come in handy. We're going to start using the parentheses for us, but again, we can also use the open circle. Likewise, if we had x is greater than -2, well, if x is larger than -2, then all the numbers to the right of -2 would satisfy that inequality all the way out. But -2 is excluded, so we can use the open circle or the parentheses that opens towards all of the answers. Now we also have non-strict inequalities. And basically what that means is you want everybody either to the left or to the right of that number, but also the number itself would work. So for less than or equal to, we still use the less than symbol, but don't forget we have that bar underneath. So that extra line means it's or equals to, and then greater than or equals to. Now, if we were using these on a graph to show that that endpoint is also a possibility, we use what we call a closed circle. or we can use brackets depending on which direction our solutions are going. So let's say if we did x less than or equal to 1, then not only is everybody to the left of 1 a solution, but that also means 1 is a solution. So we're going to use brackets instead of parentheses. So you have to be very deliberate, because a lot of times if you just throw something on there, your brackets can look like parentheses, your parentheses can look like brackets. So just be careful. And then again, that's also a closed circle. Or if we did x greater than or equal to, let's see, let's make it 4. That way I don't have to go as far. Then everybody that's larger than 4, so the larger numbers go to the right. And we're going to include that 4 is a possible solution. So that would be a bracket opening to the right-hand side. For not equal, so here's another one that's technically an inequality. So it's an equal sign with a slash through it. So sometimes if you're solving an equation, you may end up with something like 2 equals 3, like the variables may have added up to 0. Well, we need to know, well, this is not a true statement. They're not equal. But a lot of times if we're presenting information, we use it more in terms of the variables. Like if we're solving, it's like, okay, x can be anything as long as it's not, some particular number. So let's suppose we had x does not equal 2. So that means 2 is excluded. So we're going to use the open circle. Generally, we could do the parentheses on both sides, but sometimes if there's 2 back to back, it's hard to tell. So we're going to shade everybody to the right would work. Anybody to the left would work as long as it's not 2. So we're done. Now you know how to define inequalities, use proper notation, and graph on a number line.